Dr. Kaya Velthon pressed her long, thin fingers against the control panel of the Vellani research station. The station floated quietly around the gas giant Nethys Prime, its silver walls gleaming under the distant star's light. For 3 years, Kaya and her team had studied the strange energy patterns that danced through the planet's thick atmosphere. Their work was peaceful, important, and completely harmless. That peace ended when the alarms started screaming. "Kaya!" called her assistant, young Thomas Veldon, his voice high with fear. "Ships are coming! Big ones!" Kaya rushed to the main viewing screen. Dark shapes moved against the stars, growing larger every second. The ships looked wrong somehow, angular and aggressive where Vellani vessels were smooth and curved. These were not the gentle research ships of her people. "Krogar Raiders," whispered Elder Mora Velshan, the station's senior researcher. Her old eyes were wide with terror. "We must send the distress signal immediately." Kaya's hands shook as she activated the emergency broadcast system. The message went out across space in the standard galactic frequency, carrying their plea for help to anyone who might listen. The Vellani had never needed military protection before. Their worlds were peaceful garden planets, and their people studied science and art. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight. "Peaceful Vellani research station to any Galactic Council ships," Kaya spoke into the transmitter. "We are under attack by unknown raiders. We have no defenses. Please send immediate assistance. We are a scientific mission with no military value." The message repeated automatically as the raider ships grew closer. Kaya watched the screens, hoping to see the familiar blue glow of Council rescue ships appearing to save them. The Galactic Council always protected peaceful species. That was what civilization meant. But the ships that dropped out of hyperspace were nothing like Council vessels. They were huge, dark gray monsters covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Strange symbols marked their hulls, symbols that looked like they came from a warrior culture. The ships moved like predators, spreading out in hunting formations that made Kaya's stomach twist with fear. "Who are they?" Thomas whispered. Nobody answered because nobody knew. On the human dreadnought Incheon's Fury, Captain Lee Hyun studied the alien distress signal with cold interest. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and graying hair, the kind of officer who had survived 20 years of space combat by thinking 3 moves ahead of his enemies. "Interesting," he said to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-won. "Peaceful scientific mission, no military value, requesting humanitarian aid." Park was younger than her captain, but she had the same hard look that came from years of fighting in the dark between stars. "The signal is sophisticated, sir. Their technology level is high, and look at this location data." Hyun nodded as he studied the star charts. The Vellani system sat right on the edge of what humans called the frontier zone, unexplored space that might hold new worlds for Earth's growing population. A peaceful alien species with advanced technology would be very useful neighbors. "Orders." "Sir?" Park asked. "We respond to the distress call," Hyun said. "Full fleet deployment." "And Park? Send the recon drones ahead. I want to know exactly what we're walking into." "Yes, sir. Should I prep diplomatic protocols?" Hyun smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "Prep everything, Commander. Diplomacy, intimidation, and overwhelming force. Let's see what these aliens are really worth." The human fleet moved through hyperspace like a pack of metal wolves. 12 warships, each one designed for one purpose: to destroy anything that threatened human interests. They had been patrolling the frontier for months, looking for opportunities to expand Earth's influence. The Vellani distress call was exactly the kind of opportunity Captain Hyun had been waiting for. When the human ships appeared in the Vellani system, they did not announce themselves. They simply took position between the research station and the approaching raiders, their weapons charging with deadly energy. On the Vellani station, panic spread through the corridors. "They're not Council ships," Tomas cried, staring at the screen readings. "The computer can't identify them at all." Kaya tried to establish communication with the newcomers, but their translation protocols failed completely. The alien language seemed to be based on completely different mathematical principles. She sent basic number sequences, hoping to show peaceful intent. The response came back immediately. But the numbers weren't about peace. They were calculations about orbital mechanics, weapons range, and battle formations. "They're positioning for combat," Elder Mora said, her voice barely a whisper. "But against who?" The answer came when Commander Kim Minji launched her fighter, squadrons from the assault carrier Busan's Wrath. The small, fast ships poured out of the carrier's launch bays like angry insects, moving to intercept the raiders before they could reach the station. Kaya had never seen military ships move so fast or with such deadly purpose. The human fighters flew in perfect formation, their movements coordinated like they shared a single mind. When the Krogar raiders opened fire, the humans didn't scatter or retreat. They attacked. The battle was brief and completely one-sided. The Krogar ships were tough and well-armed, but they had never faced human military technology. Human weapons cut through their shields like they were made of paper. Human tactics overwhelmed their simple raider formations. Within minutes, 3 Krogar ships were destroyed, and the rest were running for their lives. "Magnificent," Elder Mora breathed, watching the human fighters return to their carrier. But also terrifying. Kaya was already working on the translation problem. These newcomers had saved them, but they were clearly not like any species the Volani had ever encountered. The way they fought suggested a warrior culture, possibly even a predator species. The Galactic Council had warned about such races, species that saw conflict as natural and conquest as normal. Finally, the translation. Protocols found common ground in mathematics and basic physics. The first message from the human fleet was simple and direct. "Velani Station, this is Captain Lee Hyun of the human vessel Incheon's Fury. Prepare to receive our representatives for immediate consultation." The voice was calm, professional, and absolutely confident. This was not a request, it was an order. We thank you for your assistance," Kaya replied carefully. "We are grateful for your intervention against the raiders." "The raiders have been dealt with," came the response. "We need to discuss your situation and our mutual interests. Prepare Docking Bay 3 for our shuttle." Mutual interests? Kaya felt a chill run down her spine. She had called for rescue, for mercy from the raiders. But these humans spoke like they had their own agenda. As the human shuttle approached the station, Kaya realized that her simple distress call had changed everything. The Volani had been alone in space for so long, protected by their peaceful nature and their distance from the galaxy's violent regions. Now they had attracted the attention of something that might be far more dangerous than any raiders. Through the viewing port, she could see the human ships taking defensive positions around the station. They weren't preparing to leave. They were preparing to stay. "What have we done?" she whispered to herself. But deep down, Kaya already knew the answer. They had called for help from the darkness between stars, and something had answered. Something that might change the Volani forever. Whether they wanted it or not, the humans were coming aboard, and nothing would ever be the same. Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-won stepped off the human shuttle and into a world that seemed made of crystal and light. The Volani station was beautiful in a way that made her instinctively suspicious. Everything was too clean, too peaceful, too perfect. In her experience, anything that looked this harmless usually was harmless, which meant it was also useless in a fight. The Volani who greeted them were tall and thin, with large eyes and graceful movements. They looked like they had never seen violence in their entire lives. Dr. Kaya Velthon, who introduced herself as the station leader, offered them something called a harmony blessing, a ritual involving shared meditation and plant extracts. "That's very kind," Park said politely, "but we need to conduct a security assessment first." She gestured to the Marines behind her. Sergeant Major Cho Dae-hyun and his team spread out through the station with professional efficiency, their heavy boots echoing strangely in the quiet corridors. The Volani watched them with obvious nervousness. "Security assessment?" Dr. Kaya asked. "But the raiders are gone, are they not?" "The immediate threat is gone," Park corrected. "But there will be others. There are always others." She pulled out a portable scanner and began recording data about the station's structure, power systems, and defensive capabilities. The results were exactly what she had expected. Impressive science, zero military value. Beautiful architecture, Park noted, speaking into her communicator. Advanced laboratories, sophisticated research equipment. Defensive capabilities are Essentially, zero. No weapons, no shields worth mentioning, no reinforced sections. Dr. Kaya seemed confused by this assessment. We are researchers, not soldiers. We have no need for weapons. Everyone has need for weapons, Sergeant Major Cho said from across the room. He was examining a wall panel that had caught his attention. The only question is whether you make them yourself or let someone else do the fighting for you. The cultural divide became more obvious when Dr. Kaya tried to explain Volani society to their guests. Her people had evolved on garden worlds where the biggest predators were small animals that ate fruit. They had developed advanced technology through cooperation and peaceful study. War was something they knew existed in the galaxy, but it seemed as distant as ancient history. We believe that intelligent species can solve their differences through discussion and mutual understanding, Dr. Kaya explained. Violence is the failure of civilization. Park nodded politely, but privately she thought these aliens wouldn't last a week in human space. Earth had taught humanity different lessons. When someone wanted what you had, talking rarely stopped them from taking it. Captain Lee Hyun's voice came through the station's communication system, speaking to the assembled Volani leadership through hologram. Elder Thane Velcor, who appeared to be their senior leader, looked relieved to finally speak with the human commander. Captain Hyun, we cannot express our gratitude enough for your timely intervention, Elder Thane said. The Galactic Council has procedures for situations like this, but they take time to implement. Your quick response saved many lives. Hyun's expression was neutral but attentive. The raiders were a minor threat. What concerns me more is why they chose to attack your station specifically. We assumed it was random piracy, Dr. Kaya said. Our research has no military applications. Nothing is random in space, Hyun replied. Someone told them you were here. Someone gave them intelligence about your defenses, and someone thought you were worth the risk. The question is who and why. The Volani leaders exchanged worried glances. They had never thought about their situation. In such terms, Elder Thane cleared his throat carefully. Captain, we hope that you will escort us to the nearest council station where we can file a proper incident report and request additional protection. Hyun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words changed everything. Protection isn't something you file a report for, Elder Thane. Protection is something you earn, something you pay for, and something you maintain through strength. The Galactic Council can offer you procedures and paperwork. I can offer you results. What kind of results? Dr. Kaya asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would be complicated. The kind that ensures this never happens again, Hyun said simply. The kind that makes your enemies think twice before they consider you an easy target. Lieutenant Commander Park watched the Volani faces as understanding began to dawn. They were starting to realize that human help came with conditions. We appreciate your offer, Elder Thane said carefully. But Volani philosophy emphasizes peaceful solutions to galactic problems. Captain Hyun's slight smile was not reassuring. How has that philosophy worked for you so far? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Sergeant Major Cho's voice cut through the noise. Captain, we have incoming ships, multiple contacts moving fast. Park immediately shifted into combat mode, her hand moving to her sidearm. Around her, the Volani began to panic, their peaceful nature making them freeze when they should have been running for cover. More raiders? Dr. Kaya asked. Krogar reinforcements, Park confirmed, reading the scanner data. 12 ships this time, and they're bringing heavy weapons. Elder Thane looked toward the hologram of Captain Hyun with desperate eyes. Captain, surely you'll withdraw your ships to safety. We cannot ask you to fight another battle for our sake. Hyun's expression didn't change at all. We're not withdrawing. Elder, and this isn't just your battle anymore. What do you mean? Dr. Kaya asked. You called for help, Hyun explained calmly. We answered. That makes you our responsibility now, and humans protect what's theirs. Through the station windows, the Volani could see the human fleet moving into attack formation. The ships moved with predatory grace, positioning themselves between the station and the incoming threat. There was no hesitation, no discussion, no attempt at negotiation. Commander Kim Minji's voice came through the communication system, cold and professional. Fighter squadrons launching, all ships, weapons free. Priority target. Prevent any enemy vessel from approaching the station. Dr. Kaya watched in fascination and horror as human warfare unfolded before her eyes. The fighters, launched like a swarm of metal predators, moving in perfect coordination toward the approaching enemy. The larger ships held position, their weapons charging with deadly energy. "This is how humans fight?" she whispered to Park. "This is how humans survive," Park corrected. "In our part of the galaxy, you kill your enemies quickly and completely, or they come back with friends." The battle that followed was nothing like the Vallani had imagined space combat would be. There were no honor duels, no formal challenges, no attempts to minimize casualties. The humans simply destroyed everything that threatened them with overwhelming efficiency. When the last Krogar ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the Vallani station was completely intact and completely surrounded by human warships. "The immediate area is secure," Captain Hyun announced. "But this location has now been marked as hostile territory by the Krogar clans. They'll be back with bigger fleets and better intelligence." Elder Thane's voice was shaky when he spoke. "What do you suggest we do?" "That depends," Hyun replied, "on whether you want to survive or just postpone your destruction." Dr. Kaya realized that her simple distress call had brought them more than rescue. It had brought them to the attention of a species that saw the galaxy in terms of hunters and prey, strength and weakness, survival and extinction. The humans had saved them twice now. But the way Captain Hyun spoke made it clear that salvation came with a price. The only question was whether the Vallani would be willing to pay it. Outside the station windows, human patrol ships began taking up permanent positions. The rescue was over. The occupation had begun. Dr. Kaya Velthan had studied stellar physics for most of her adult life, but watching human military tactics was like observing an entirely different form of science. Commander Kim Minji's fighters didn't engage the Krogar ships individually. They moved as a single organism, coordinating their attacks with mathematical precision. "Why don't they fight one-on-one?" she asked Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-won, who was monitoring the battle from the station's command center. "Because winning is more important than honor," Park replied without taking her eyes off the tactical display. "Human military doctrine is simple. Identify the threat, apply overwhelming force, eliminate the possibility of retaliation." Kaya watched as 3 human fighters surrounded a single Krogar raider, hitting it from different angles until its shields collapsed. The alien ship tried to signal surrender, broadcasting the universal sign for non-combatant status. "They're surrendering," Kaya said urgently. "Your fighters need to stop attacking." Park glanced at her with something that might have been pity. That ship attacked a protected station. Its crew chose their fate when they chose to be pirates. The Krogar ship exploded in a bright flash, taking its entire crew with it. Kaya felt sick, but Park seemed completely unmoved by the deaths in dice. "Galactic law surrender must be accepted," Kaya protested. "Human law is simpler," Park said. "If you threaten what's ours, you die. No exceptions, no negotiations, no second chances." Captain Lee Hyun's voice came through the communication system, addressing both his fleet and the Vallani station. "All enemy vessels have been destroyed. No survivors, no escape pods, no witnesses. The threat has been permanently eliminated." Elder Thane Velkor's horrified voice responded immediately. "Captain, those ships contained living beings. Surely some could have been captured and reformed." "Reformed?" Hyun's tone suggested genuine puzzlement. "Elder, these were pirates who attacked peaceful researchers. They made their choice. We simply made sure they couldn't make it again." Sergeant Major Cho Dae-hyun, who had been quietly installing some kind of human equipment in the station's main corridor, looked up from his work. "In human space, pirates get one warning shot. After that, they become debris." Dr. Kaya was beginning to understand that humans approached conflict from a fundamentally different perspective than any species in the Galactic Council. The Council sought to minimize violence, to reform criminals, to solve conflicts through discussion and rehabilitation. Humans simply eliminated problems permanently. "How did your species survive with such attitudes?" Elder Thane asked through the hologram system. Surely constant warfare would destroy any civilization. Captain Hyun was quiet for a moment before responding. "Elder, let me tell you about Earth. Our home world is what the galaxy calls a death world. a planet where everything is trying to kill everything else. We evolved alongside predators that could tear us apart, diseases that could wipe out entire populations, and natural disasters that could destroy civilizations. He paused, letting the implications sink in. We didn't survive by being peaceful. We survived by being better at violence than anything else on our world. And when we reached space, we discovered that the same rules applied on a galactic scale. Park activated a holographic display showing star charts of human territory. Our space is the safest region in this part of the galaxy, she explained. No pirates, no raiders, no unexplained disappearances, because everyone knows that attacking human interests results in immediate and total retaliation. But at what cost? Dr. Kaya asked. How many beings have died to create this safety? Fewer than would have died if we had tried to negotiate with every threat, Sergeant Major Cho answered bluntly. Peace through strength isn't just a slogan, it's mathematics. The more enemies you destroy completely, the fewer enemies you have to fight later. The philosophical discussion was interrupted when new contacts appeared on the scanner displays. More ships were approaching the system, but these weren't raiders. The identification signals marked them as Galactic Council vessels. Finally, Elder Thane said with obvious relief, "The Council has responded to our distress signal. Captain Hyun, we appreciate your assistance, but proper authorities are now here to handle the situation." Captain Hyun's response was calm, but carried an undertone of amusement. "We'll see about that." 3 Council ships approached the system, broadcasting standard diplomatic protocols and requesting permission to investigate the reported raider attack. Their ships were sleek and beautiful, designed more for exploration and diplomacy than warfare. Dr. Kaya felt torn between relief and unexpected anxiety. The Council represented everything the Villani believed in: peaceful cooperation, diplomatic solutions, rehabilitation rather than destruction. But after watching human efficiency in dealing with actual threats, the Council ships seemed fragile and unprepared. "This is Ambassador Corvain Thule of the Galactic Council vessel Harmony's voice," came the transmission. "We are responding to a distress signal from this system. Please identify yourselves and explain your presence here." "This is Captain Lee Hyun of the human fleet," came the immediate response. "We responded to the distress signal and neutralized the hostile forces. The situation is under control." "Human fleet?" Ambassador Thule's voice carried obvious confusion. "I'm not familiar with any human presence in this sector. Are you registered with the Council's colonial administration?" The silence that followed was heavy with implications. "Ambassador," Captain Hyun said finally, "humans don't register with anyone. We go where we choose and do what we think is necessary." Park looked at Dr. Kaya with an expression that was almost sympathetic. "Your Council friends are about to learn some hard truths about galactic politics." "What do you mean?" Kaya asked. "I mean that diplomacy only works when both sides have something the other wants," Park explained. "The Council thinks their authority comes from moral superiority and bureaucratic procedures. Humans believe authority comes from the ability to protect your interests and destroy your enemies." Through the station's communication system, they could hear Ambassador Thule trying to establish Council jurisdiction over the system. His arguments were based on galactic law, species rights, and proper diplomatic protocols. Captain Hyun listened politely, then gave his response. "Ambassador, the Villani called for help and we answered. They are now under human protection. If the Council had wanted to handle this situation, you should have arrived before we did." "This is highly irregular," Ambassador Thule protested. "The Villani are not a human colony. They have rights under Council law." "They have rights under human protection now," Hyun corrected. "Rights that we will defend with our lives and our weapons." Dr. Kaya realized that she was witnessing something historically significant. For the first time, a species was openly defying Council authority and backing that defiance with military force. "What happens now?" she asked Park quietly. "Now we see if your Council friends want to test human resolve," Park replied. "But I suspect they'll decide that 3 diplomatic ships aren't enough to challenge 12 human warships." Elder Thane was trying to mediate between the 2 groups, but his efforts only highlighted the fundamental differences in their approaches. The Council wanted to discuss jurisdiction and legal precedents. The humans simply stated facts. They were here. They were staying, and anyone who tried to force them to leave would be destroyed. As the hours passed, it became clear that the Council delegation was not prepared for direct confrontation with a species that refused to acknowledge their authority. Ambassador Thul's increasingly desperate demands for human withdrawal were met with polite but absolute refusal. "The Vallani are free to choose their own protection," Captain Hyun stated. "If they prefer Council promises over human guarantees, they may leave with you at any time." The choice was now squarely on Vallani's shoulders. Stay with the humans and accept whatever changes that would bring, or trust in Council protection that had already failed once. Dr. Kaya looked at the tactical displays showing human ships positioned protectively around their station, then at the Council vessels, maintaining a careful distance. The lesson was clear. In a dangerous galaxy, safety belonged to those strong enough to take it and keep it. The age of Vallani innocence was ending. The only question was what would replace it. 3 weeks after the human fleet's arrival, Dr. Kaya Velthon barely recognized her research station. What had once been a peaceful scientific outpost now looked like a fortress. Human defense platforms floated around the station like metal guardians, their weapon systems constantly scanning space for threats. Commander Kim Minji supervised the installation of the latest defensive equipment, something called a plasma grid that could destroy incoming missiles before they reached the station. The work was efficient and professional, but it transformed the station's appearance completely. "The modifications are necessary," Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-won explained when Kaya expressed concern about the changes. "Your station was defenseless. Now it can survive anything short of a full fleet assault." "But we're researchers, not soldiers," Kaya protested. "These weapons change the fundamental nature of what we do here." Park's expression was patient, but firm. "Dr. Velthon, the fundamental nature of your situation changed the moment you called for help. You can either accept that reality or pretend it doesn't exist. But the galaxy won't pretend along with you. The changes went far beyond defensive installations. Human technicians had integrated their communication systems with Vallani equipment, giving them access to data about research projects, resource surveys, and technological developments. When Kaya questioned this level of integration, she was told it was necessary for coordination of defensive efforts. Captain Lee Hyun called a formal meeting with the Vallani leadership to discuss what he called long-term security arrangements. The holographic conference room buzzed with tension as Elder Thane Velcor and his council faced the human commander. "The recent attacks proved that this system is now a target," Hyun began without preamble. "The Krogar clans have marked you for future raids, and other pirate groups will follow their example. Isolated defense is no longer sufficient." Elder Thane shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Captain, we are grateful for your protection, but we hope this arrangement is temporary. Once the immediate threat passes, surely we can return to our peaceful research." "The threat will never pass," Hyun said bluntly. "You have something valuable. Advanced technology, strategic location, and resources that others want. That makes you a permanent target. The only question is whether you want permanent protection." Dr. Kaya felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of permanent protection?" Captain Hyun activated a holographic display showing detailed plans for the Vallani system. "Complete defensive coverage, military bases on your outer planets, industrial facilities to support our fleet operations, colonial settlements to provide population security." The scope of the proposed changes was staggering. The humans weren't talking about protecting the Vallani. They were talking about transforming their entire civilization. "This sounds more like occupation than protection," Elder Thane said carefully. "Protection requires presence," Hyun replied without emotion. "Half measures lead to half failures. If you want security, you need to commit to it completely." Young researcher Naya Velshin, who had been quietly observing the human military operations, spoke up for the first time. "What would be required of us in this arrangement?" Hyun's smile was coldly professional. "Cooperation, resource sharing, technology exchange, integration of your research capabilities with our strategic objectives." "And if we refuse?" Elder Thane asked. "Then you're free to try the Council's protection instead," Hyun said. "I'm sure Ambassador Thul will be happy to file the appropriate paperwork after your station is destroyed." The brutal honesty was typical of human diplomatic style. No threats, no emotional appeals, just clear statements of cause and effect of The following days, the first human civilian ships arrived in the system. The transport Soul's Promise carried not just military supplies, but families, engineers, and administrators. Administrator Han Sumin came aboard the station to discuss what she called mutual development opportunities. Han was different from the military officers, smaller, more diplomatic, but equally determined. She spoke to Dr. Kaya about the benefits of human partnership with the enthusiasm of someone selling a product. Your biotechnology research is centuries ahead of human capabilities, Han explained as they toured the station's laboratories. Combined with human industrial capacity and defensive technology, we could achieve breakthroughs neither species could manage alone. At what cost? Kaya asked. Change, Han admitted. Your people will need to adapt to working with humans. Your research priorities will need to align with mutual interests. Your society will need to accept that isolation is no longer possible. The implications became clearer when Sergeant Major Cho De-hyun announced the formation of a Vellani Defense Volunteer Corps. The idea of Vellani learning military skills horrified most of the station's population, but a small group of younger researchers showed unexpected interest. Naya Velshen was among the first to volunteer. Someone needs to understand how humans think, she explained to Kaya privately. If we're going to survive in their world, we need to learn their ways. But violence goes against everything our people believe, Kaya protested. Our beliefs didn't stop the raiders, Naya replied bluntly. Human weapons did. Maybe it's time to question which beliefs actually help us survive. The philosophical divide within Vellani society was growing wider each day. The older generation, led by Elder Thane, wanted to maintain traditional values while somehow avoiding the consequences of galactic reality. The younger generation, represented by Naya and others, was beginning to understand that survival might require abandoning some of those traditions. Dr. Kaya found herself caught in the middle, personally torn between gratitude for human protection and fear of what that protection was costing her people. When she expressed these concerns to Commander Park, the human officer's response was surprisingly gentle. Change is never easy, Park acknowledged. But Dr. Velthan, what was the alternative? Let the raiders destroy your station and kill your people? Hope the Council would eventually send help? Accept that peaceful species have no right to exist in a violent galaxy? There should be other options, Kaya insisted. There are, Park agreed. You can become strong enough to protect yourselves, or you can ally with someone who is already strong. Those are the only options that don't end with extinction. The reality of human protection became even clearer when the first colonial ships landed on Vellani worlds. Human industrial complexes began rising on planets that had known only agricultural settlements and research facilities. The humans brought jobs, technology, and security, but they also brought permanent change to Vellani society. Administrator Han showed Kaya the economic projections for the joint Human-Vellani Development Program. The numbers were impressive. Increased trade, technological advancement, improved living standards for both species. But they also showed Vellani society becoming increasingly dependent on human systems and human protection. Is this what partnership looks like? Kaya asked. Our people becoming junior members in a human enterprise? Partnership is what you make of it, Han replied. The humans who succeed in our society are the ones who embrace human values, efficiency, strength, self-reliance. The same opportunity is available to your people. And those who don't embrace those values? Han's expression was diplomatically neutral. They find comfortable positions in areas where their traditional skills are still useful. The meaning was clear: adapt or become irrelevant. As the month progressed, the transformation of Vellani space accelerated. Human patrol ships began regular sweeps of the outer system. Human communication networks replaced Vellani systems. Human military protocols became standard operating procedure for all station activities. Dr. Kaya realized that the simple distress calls she had sent weeks ago had set in motion changes that would reshape her entire civilization. The humans hadn't conquered the Vellani through force. They had simply made themselves indispensable. When the next Galactic Council delegation arrived, demanding an explanation for human activities in Vellani space, Captain Hyun's response was perfectly reasonable. They were protecting their allies at the request of the Vellani government. The fact that the Vallani government now had no choice but to make such requests was a detail that didn't appear in any official reports. Protection, Kaya was learning, was just another word for control, and the humans were very good at making their control feel like salvation. Ambassador Corvain Thule of the Galactic Council arrived expecting to find a simple rescue operation that had gotten slightly out of hand. What he discovered instead was a fully operational human military base where a Vallani research station used to be. His diplomatic escort consisted of 3 council vessels. Beautiful ships designed for exploration and peaceful contact. They looked fragile and helpless compared to the 12 human warships that now patrolled Vallani space with casual confidence. "This is completely unacceptable," Ambassador Thule declared during his first official meeting with Captain Lee Hyun. "The Vallani are a peaceful species under council protection. Your military occupation violates 17 different galactic treaties." Captain Hyun listened politely from his command chair, surrounded by tactical displays showing human fleet positions throughout the system. "Ambassador, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're not occupying anyone. We're protecting our allies at their request." "Allies?" Thule's voice rose in pitch. "The Vallani have been council members for over 2 centuries. They can't simply abandon their obligations and treaties." "They haven't abandoned anything," Hyun replied calmly, "but they've chosen additional protection because council protection proved inadequate." Dr. Kaya Velthan watched the exchange from the station's conference room, feeling like a piece in a game she didn't understand. The council represented everything her people had believed in for generations: peaceful cooperation, diplomatic solutions, gradual progress through consensus. But after weeks of human protection, the council's approach seemed slow and ineffective. "The proper procedure," Ambassador Thule continued, "is to file an incident report with the council's security committee. They will investigate the raider, attacks, and implement appropriate protective measures." "How long does that process take?" Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-won asked with professional interest. "Well, there are protocols to follow," Thule replied. "Initial review, threat assessment, resource allocation, member species consultation. Typically 6 to 8 months for a comprehensive response." "The raiders would have killed everyone here." "In 6 to 8 minutes, Park observed. "Your protocols assume the victims survive long enough to benefit from them." Administrator Han Sumin had prepared detailed presentations about the economic benefits of human-Vallani cooperation. She showed Ambassador Thule trade figures, technological advancement projections, and security assessments that painted the Council's protection as obsolete. "The galaxy is changing, Ambassador," Han explained. "Species that cling to old diplomatic models are being left behind by those who adapt to current realities. The Council has maintained galactic peace for over 1,000 years, Thule protested. "The Council has maintained the illusion of peace," Captain Hyun corrected. "Real peace exists only in regions strong enough to enforce it. Human space has no pirates, no raiders, no unexplained disappearances. Can the Council make the same claim?" The uncomfortable truth was that they couldn't. Council space was plagued by the very problems that human space had eliminated through superior firepower and absolute intolerance for threats. Elder Thane Velcor tried to mediate between the two positions, but his efforts only highlighted how far the Vallani situation had already changed. "Surely there's room for cooperation between the Council and our human friends," he suggested hopefully. Of course, Ambassador Thule agreed quickly. "The Council is always willing to work with legitimate governmental authorities. If the humans would simply register their activities with the appropriate departments and agree to oversight protocols." Captain Hyun's smile was not friendly. "Ambassador, humans don't register with anyone. We don't accept oversight from anyone, and we don't ask permission to protect our interests." "That attitude is precisely the problem," Thule replied, his diplomatic composure beginning to crack. "The galactic community requires cooperation and mutual respect for established authorities." "The galactic community," Park interjected, "requires results. The Vallani called for help and we provided it. The Council offered bureaucracy and we offered survival. They chose survival." The philosophical differences between human and Council approaches became even more obvious when Ambassador Thule tried to negotiate the withdrawal of human forces. His arguments were based on legal precedents, species rights, and proper diplomatic procedures. Captain Huon's arguments were based on practical realities. Human forces were protecting Volani lives and property. Human technology was improving. Volani capabilities and human presence was preventing future attacks. The choice between competing protection offers was simple mathematics. What you're describing is extortion, Ambassador Thule accused. You've created a situation where the Volani feel they need your protection, then use that dependency to expand your influence. We've created a situation where the Volani are alive, Hyun replied. Everything else is secondary to that achievement. Dr. Kaya found herself increasingly sympathetic to the human position, despite her lifelong loyalty to Council ideals. The humans might be aggressive and demanding, but they had saved her people when the Council's protection had failed completely. The debate took an ominous turn when Ambassador Thule threatened economic sanctions against human activities in Council space. The galactic community will not tolerate this kind of unilateral expansion, he warned. The galactic community is welcome to try stopping us, Captain Hyun responded without emotion. But Ambassador, before you escalate this situation, you should understand what you're challenging. Commander Kim Minji had prepared a demonstration of human military capabilities for the Council delegation. What she called routine training exercises showcased weapons technology that shouldn't have existed according to Council scientific understanding. The human fighters moved through attack patterns that defied Council knowledge of physics. Their weapons hit targets with impossible accuracy at ranges that should have been far beyond effective firing distance. Their defensive systems absorbed energy levels that should have destroyed any known ship design. How is this possible? Ambassador Thule whispered, watching the display in obvious shock. Human technology developed differently than Council technology, Administrator Han explained with professional pride. We focused on efficiency and results rather than consensus and safety margins. Your weapons could devastate entire systems, Thule said, his voice filled with horror. Yes, Captain Hyun agreed simply. That's rather the point. The demonstration had its intended effect. Ambassador Thule's threats of military intervention quietly disappeared from his diplomatic vocabulary. 3 Council ships might be sufficient for showing the flag, but they were completely inadequate for challenging a force that could destroy them without taking damage in return. This changes everything, Thule muttered, staring at the tactical displays. Nothing has changed, Hyun corrected. The galaxy has always belonged to the strong. The Council simply pretended otherwise. Young researcher Naya Velshin, who had been quietly observing the negotiations, asked the question that nobody else wanted to voice. What happens to species who can't match human capabilities? The same thing that's always happened, Administrator. Han replied pragmatically. They adapt, they find useful roles in the new order, or they become irrelevant. The galaxy doesn't guarantee anyone a comfortable existence. Dr. Kaya realized that she was witnessing the end of an era. The Galactic Council's authority was based on the assumption that all species would voluntarily submit to diplomatic solutions and bureaucratic procedures. Humans had simply refused to participate in that assumption. The Council will not accept this precedent, Ambassador Thule declared, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The Council will accept whatever the galaxy forces it to accept, Captain Hyun replied, just like everyone else. As the Council delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Thule made one final attempt to appeal to Volani loyalty. Your people have been part of the galactic community for centuries, he reminded Elder Thane. Don't abandon that heritage for temporary security. Elder Thane's response surprised everyone, including himself. Ambassador, heritage that can't protect our children isn't worth preserving. The Council ships departed without achieving any of their objectives. The humans remained in control of Volani space, and the precedent was set. For the first time in galactic history, a species had openly defied Council authority and backed that defiance with superior force. Dr. Kaya watched the Council vessels disappear into hyperspace, carrying with them the last remnants of her people's old life. The age of galactic consensus was ending. The age of human dominance was about to begin, and despite everything she had believed about peace and cooperation, she couldn't bring herself to regret the change. 6 months after the first human ships had arrived in response to their distress call, Dr. Kaya Velthan stood in her transformed laboratory and marveled at how much had changed. The research equipment around her represented a fusion of Volani, Biotechnology and human engineering that neither species could have achieved alone. The work they were doing now would have taken her people centuries to accomplish independently. The price of this advancement was visible everywhere. Her peaceful research station had become the command center of a joint human-Vellani military alliance. The gentle corridors where she had once meditated between experiments now echoed with the boots of human marines and Vellani defense volunteers. Naya Velshin, now wearing the uniform of a Vellani defense coordinator, entered the laboratory. With a confidence that would have been impossible before human contact. She moved like someone who had learned to see the galaxy as humans did, as a place where strength determined survival and weakness invited destruction. The integration is proceeding ahead of schedule, Naya reported, referring to the latest. Group of Vellani volunteers completing human military training. Sergeant Major Cho says our people learn quickly once they understand what's at stake. Kaya nodded, though part of her still felt sadness at how much her species had changed. The Vellani who emerged from human training were more capable, more confident, and more dangerous than any generation in their species' history. They were also no longer the peaceful researchers who had built their civilization on principles of harmony and cooperation. "Do you ever regret it?" Kaya asked quietly. "Giving up who we were?" "We didn't give up who we were," Naya replied firmly. "We chose to become who we needed to be. The alternative was extinction." Captain Lee Hyun's voice came through the station's communication system, announcing the arrival of another delegation. But this time, the visitors weren't from the Galactic Council. They were representatives from the Kalrani Republic, a species that had been fighting a losing war against raiders for over a year. "Dr. Velthan, your presence is requested in the main conference room," came the announcement. In the conference room, Kaya found herself face-to-face with beings who looked remarkably like the Vellani had 6 months earlier. Desperate, frightened, and completely out of their depth in a violent galaxy. The Kalrani delegation consisted of elderly diplomats and academic leaders who had clearly never seen real combat. "We heard about your situation," their leader, Professor Yiln Kalresh, explained to the assembled Vellani leadership, "how you called for help and received protection. We were hoping, that is, You need human protection," Administrator Han Sumin said bluntly, cutting through the diplomatic hesitation. "Your worlds are under attack. Your council protection has proven inadequate, and you're running out of options." The Kalrani professor nodded miserably. "The raiders destroy our research facilities, steal our resources, and the council's response has been to form another committee to study the problem." Elder Thane Velcor, now serving as Vellani representative to the Human Colonial Authority, leaned forward with genuine sympathy. "Professor Kalaresh, I understand your situation better than you might imagine. 6 months ago, we faced the exact same choice you're facing now." "What choice is that?" the professor asked. "Evolution or extinction," Elder Thane replied simply. "The galaxy doesn't care about our peaceful philosophies or our desire to avoid conflict. It only respects strength." Captain Hyun entered the conference room with his usual calm confidence. "Professor, we've reviewed the intelligence about your situation. The raiders attacking your worlds are part of the same network that targeted the Vellani. They're systematic, well-organized, and completely ruthless." "Can you help us?" Professor Kalarash asked desperately. "We can save you," Hyun corrected. "Whether we help you depends on whether you're willing to accept what salvation requires." Administrator Han activated a holographic display showing the transformed Vellani system. Human industrial complexes, military bases, and colonial settlements dotted planets that had once been purely academic research facilities. "This is what protection looks like," Han explained. "Complete integration of human and Vellani capabilities, shared technology, joint military forces, coordinated economic development. Your people become part of something larger and stronger than they could ever be alone." "And the cost?" Professor Kalresh asked. "Change," Naya Velshen answered before any of the humans could respond. "Your people will need to learn new ways of thinking. Some of your traditions will become obsolete. Your children will grow up in a galaxy where strength matters more than philosophy." Dr. Kaya watched the Kalrani delegation struggle with the same decision her people had faced. accept human protection and lose their independence, or maintain their principles and probably die. How do we know you won't simply conquer us? Another Kalrani delegate asked. Lieutenant Commander Park Jiwon smiled coldly. If we wanted to conquer you, Professor, we wouldn't need your permission. Conquest is what happens when someone takes what you have by force. Protection is what happens when someone keeps others from taking what you have. The difference is whether you survive the process. Over the following hours, Captain Hyun outlined the same protection package that the Vallani had accepted. Military, bases, industrial development, technology sharing, and complete integration into human defensive networks. The Kalrani would gain security and advancement, but they would lose their isolation and innocence. The galaxy is changing, Captain Hyun explained during a private moment with the Vallani leadership. Species are being forced to choose between adaptation and extinction. The Council's protection is proving inadequate against modern threats. Only strength provides real security. Dr. Kaya realized that her people's experience was becoming a template for human expansion across the galaxy. Other peaceful species would face the same choice the Vallani had faced. Most would probably make the same decision. Are we the first? She asked. You're the first successful integration, Administrator Han replied. But you won't be the last. We've received similar distress calls from 17 other species in the past month. The scope of human ambitions was becoming clear. They weren't just protecting individual planets or systems. They were systematically replacing the Galactic Council as the dominant power in their region of space. When the Kalrani delegation finally made their decision, it surprised no one. Faced with the choice between human protection and probable destruction, they chose survival. Welcome to the future, Elder Thane told them with a mixture of sympathy and satisfaction. As the months passed, the pattern repeated itself across multiple systems. Peaceful species under attack would call for help. Human fleets would respond, and another world would join the growing network of human-protected territories. The Galactic Council's protests became increasingly desperate and increasingly irrelevant. They could file formal complaints, demand investigations, and threaten sanctions, but they couldn't stop species from choosing effective protection over bureaucratic procedures. Dr. Kaya's final research report on the transformation of Vallani society made for sobering reading. Her people had become more capable, more prosperous, and more secure than ever before in their history. They had also become something fundamentally different from what they had been. The question, she wrote in her conclusion, is not whether the change was necessary. The galaxy answered that question for us. The question is whether we can maintain our essential nature while adapting to galactic realities. Naya Velshin, now commanding a mixed human-Vallani patrol squadron, provided her own answer to that question. We're still Vallani. We still value knowledge, cooperation, and peaceful development. But now we also understand that these values mean nothing if we're not strong enough to protect them. Captain Hyun's final log entry about the Vallani integration was characteristically direct. Mission accomplished. The Vallani have evolved from potential victims to useful allies. Their technology enhances our capabilities. Their worlds extend our strategic reach, and their example encourages other species to choose voluntary cooperation over forced conquest. The galaxy is learning a simple lesson, he continued. Peace exists only where strength can enforce it. The Galactic Council offered procedures and promises. Humanity offers results and reality. Most species are smart enough to recognize the difference. Standing on the observation deck of her transformed station, Dr. Kaya watched human and Vallani ships patrol together through space that was now safe from raiders, pirates, and other threats. Her people had called for mercy and received something. More valuable, they had received a future. The gentle, peaceful Vallani who had studied stars in isolation were gone forever. In their place was a hybrid civilization that combined the best of both species, Vallani curiosity and human determination, Vallani cooperation, and human strength. It wasn't the future she had imagined when she first sent that desperate distress call. But as she watched young Vallani learning human tactics and young humans studying Vallani science, she realized it was probably the only future her people could have had. The galaxy had given them a choice between evolution and extinction. They had chosen to evolve, and in a universe where strength determined survival, that choice had made all the difference.